The opalescent dome of Earth's interstellar embassy shimmered under the moonlight as Princess Alara of the Artaxian Empire adjusted her atmospheric regulator. Even after 3 months on this blue planet, she still found the air uncomfortably dense. The diplomatic reception droned on around her, a sea of formal attire and practiced smiles that felt as artificial as the recycled air pumping through her quarters. "Your Highness appears." "Distracted," whispered Tessa, her chief handmaiden and only true friend in this gilded prison of diplomatic service. Alara touched the translucent scales at her temples, a royal birthmark that no cosmetic could fully conceal. "This mission grows tiresome. Father expects me to evaluate humanity's worth as trade partners while maintaining our technological superiority. It's a contradiction wrapped in imperial arrogance." "And yet you've developed a certain appreciation for these humans," Tessa observed, her violet eyes tracking Alara's gaze across the ballroom. Commander Jason Vega stood on the opposite side, his dark uniform adorned with medals that caught the light as he laughed with fellow officers. Unlike the other military personnel who treated her with stiff formality, Commander Vega spoke to her as a person, not a royal curiosity. "He's merely informative about their culture," Alara replied, her inner eyelids fluttering, an Artaxian tell of dishonesty that Tessa recognized immediately. "Of course, Your Highness, just as your private tour of Earth's wilderness reserves were purely scientific excursions." Before Alara could retort, Ambassador Collins approached with Commander Vega in tow. "Princess Alara, might I introduce Commander Vega? He's been appointed as your security liaison for the remainder of your stay." Alara inclined her head, the formal gesture hiding her quickening pulse. "We've met briefly. The commander was instrumental during my visit to the Cascade Mountains." "The honor was mine, Your Highness," Jason replied, his eyes holding hers a moment longer than protocol dictated. Earth's natural wonders deserve to be seen through fresh eyes. 3 hours later, Alara slipped away from her royal apartments, past the security systems her people had installed, but which she had long ago learned to circumvent. The embassy gardens were empty save for one figure waiting by the ancient oak tree they had designated their meeting place weeks ago. "I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind," Jason said, his breath visible in the cool night air. Alara removed her regulator, breathing Earth's air directly, a calculated risk that allowed her to step closer to him. "The court astronomer contacted me. I'm being recalled to Artax Prime within the month. My diplomatic evaluation period is ending." Jason's face fell. "So soon, but we've barely begun to." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "I know, which is why I've decided to ignore caution tonight." Their kiss began tentatively, an exploration of differences. His warmth against her cooler skin, the strange sensation of his beard against her smooth face. But soon, physical differences melted away, leaving only the universal language of desire. Later, beneath the stars that separated their worlds, they lay together on his jacket spread across the garden grass. Alara traced the constellations visible from Earth, so different from the star patterns of her home. "In Artaxian astronomy, we believe the stars record all that has happened and all that will be," she whispered. "Tonight would be written there as a conjunction of distant worlds." Jason pulled her closer. "Where I'm from, we make our own destiny, stars be damned." "Such human arrogance," she teased, resting her head on his chest. "My people would say such union between our species is impossible, genetically incompatible." "Is that true?" he asked, suddenly concerned. Alara hesitated. "Theoretically, our biologies are different enough that natural conception should be impossible, which is fortunate, as my father would sooner destroy your planet than see his bloodline mixed with any other species." "Then we're safe," he murmured, kissing her forehead. Alara nodded, pushing away the nagging doubt. Artaxian medical science had always claimed interspecies breeding was impossible. But as the distant stars watched their forbidden embrace, neither suspected that those same stars were already recording the impossible beginning inside her. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. 3.7. Alara's chambers on Artax Prime gleamed with crystalline opulence, light fracturing through mineral walls that shifted colors with the triple sun's passage. Yet no beauty could ease her growing panic as the imperial physician examined her swollen abdomen. "The fetus develops. Unusually, Your Highness," Dr. Varick stated, his elongated fingers manipulating the holographic scan. The genetic structure shows concerning anomalies. Ilara's hand instinctively protected her belly. 6 months had passed since her return from Earth, her secret growing inside her like a supernova waiting to burst. Is my child healthy? Physically stable, yes, but these patterns. He tilted his angular head, inner eyelids flickering rapidly. I must consult with the Imperial Medical Council. You will do no such thing, Ilara commanded, her royal authority hardening her voice. This matter remains between us. After the physician departed, Tessa emerged from the adjoining chamber. How much longer can we conceal this, Your Highness? The court already whispers about your isolation. Ilara stroked her abdomen, feeling a kick stronger than an Artaxian infant should be capable of. Until I determine how to protect my child from my father's wrath. The Emperor had always viewed other species as inferior, humans particularly so. His diplomatic overtures to Earth were merely strategic, assessing potential threats rather than building alliances. If he discovered his own daughter carried a half-human child. We should consider leaving Artax Prime, Tessa suggested, lowering her voice despite the privacy shields. There are outlying colonies where... A sharp pain cut through Ilara's thoughts, doubling her over. The baby, she gasped. It's coming weeks too early. Hours later, amid the secret confines of her private medical suite, Ilara's son entered the universe with a cry that sounded unmistakably human. She reached for him with trembling hands as Tessa cleaned the infant. He's beautiful, Tessa whispered, placing the newborn in Ilara's arms. And he was perfect in every way that mattered, but undeniably, irrevocably half-human. Where Artaxian infants emerged with translucent skin that later developed their characteristic scaling, her son's skin was smooth and flushed pink. His eyes, though slightly larger than a human child's, lacked the secondary inner eyelids. Most telling were the 5 fingers on each hand rather than the Artaxian 6. Orion, Ilara named him, remembering the Earth constellation Jason had shown her. My little star child. For 3 precious days, Ilara's joy remained unshadowed as she recovered in seclusion with only Tessa and 2 trusted medical attendants admitted to her presence. She memorized every detail of Orion's face, finding echoes of Jason in his smile. But on the 4th day, the sanctuary shattered. Emperor Draken entered without announcement, his Imperial guards forcing the doors despite the protests of Ilara's attendants. His imposing figure, nearly 7 feet tall with scales that shimmered obsidian and gold, filled the doorway like an eclipse. Father, Ilara began, instinctively shielding the sleeping Orion. The Emperor's inner eyelids remained open, a sign of extreme agitation. Show me the abomination the court physicians whisper about. He is your grandson, she countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. No grandson of mine would carry alien blood. He stepped closer, royal scales pulsing with barely contained rage. What have you done, daughter? When Ilara remained silent, the Emperor gestured to his guards. One moved forward, pulling back the blanket covering Orion. The baby stirred, opening eyes that held the warm brown of his human father rather than the metallic hues of Artaxians. The Emperor recoiled as if physically struck. Human, he hissed, the word itself a condemnation. You've contaminated our bloodline with that primitive species. I've fallen in love, Ilara corrected, lifting her chin. His father is. Do not speak of this, mating. Emperor Draken's voice dropped dangerously. The offspring must be terminated, our genetic purity. Touch my son, and even your imperial blood won't protect you, Ilara warned, maternal fury overriding royal protocol. For a moment, father and daughter locked eyes in silent combat. Then the Emperor turned away, scales darkening to midnight black, the color of imperial decree. You leave me no choice, he announced to the room. Humanity has infiltrated our highest ranks, compromised our royal bloodline. This is no diplomatic incident, it is an act of genetic warfare. Ilara felt ice spreading through her veins. Father, no. The High Council convenes in 1 hour. The human species will be declared enemies of the Artaxian Empire. He paused at the doorway, not looking back. Your offspring will remain confined until decisions are made regarding its disposition. After he departed, Tessa rushed to Ilara's side. Your Highness, we have perhaps 50 minutes before additional guards arrive to enforce the Emperor's will. Alara looked down at Orion, now awake and watching her with innocent eyes that knew nothing of empires or prejudice. In that moment, the princess of the most powerful species in the known galaxy made her choice. "Prepare our emergency protocols," she ordered, steel entering her voice. "We leave tonight." The Imperial Council chamber thundered with outrage as Emperor Draken projected the genetic scans of his grandson onto the massive crystalline display. High-ranking Artaxian officials hissed and recoiled, their scale colors shifting to shades of disgust and alarm. "The evidence is irrefutable," the Emperor declared, his voice resonating through the vaulted chamber. "Humanity has attempted to contaminate our royal bloodline, a calculated attack on our genetic sovereignty." General Crixus, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet, rose from his position at the council table. His battle-scarred scales glinted dangerously under the chamber's lights. "This transgression cannot go unanswered, Your Majesty. I recommend immediate military action." "Caution, General," interjected Ambassador Vox, one of the few who had actually visited Earth. "Humans are technologically inferior but numerically substantial. A full-scale war would be costly." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting we allow this genetic assault to stand unchallenged, Ambassador?" "I suggest only that we consider all implications before." "My daughter carries the purest bloodline in our empire," Draken interrupted. "This human corruption cannot be tolerated. General Crixus, you will prepare the armada. We strike Earth within the lunar cycle." Meanwhile, in the royal wing, Alara frantically gathered supplies, while Tessa disabled the security monitors in their section of the palace. Orion slept peacefully in a portable incubation pod designed for royal travel. "The Empress Dowager's personal scout ship remains in the auxiliary hangar," Tessa reported, returning from her reconnaissance. "It's maintained for diplomatic emergencies but minimally guarded." Alara nodded, securing a data crystal containing vital information around her neck. "And my mother's old security codes should still grant us access. What about the planetary defense grid?" "That presents our greatest challenge. All departures are being restricted following the Emperor's emergency declaration." Alara's eyes fell on her sleeping son. "We'll need a distraction." She accessed her royal terminal, fingers dancing across the interface. As princess, she retained limited administrative access to certain systems, including the palace environmental controls. "What are you planning?" Tessa asked. "A cascade failure in the atmospheric regulation system. Nothing dangerous, but sufficient to trigger emergency protocols and divert security resources." Alara's fingers paused above the final command. "This constitutes treason, Tessa. You can still walk away." Tessa straightened, loyalty evident in her posture. "My oath is to the princess, not the Emperor. Besides," she added with a rare smile, "I've grown rather fond of the little hybrid." With a decisive tap, Alara executed the command. Moments later, alarms blared throughout the complex as atmospheric pressure fluctuated across multiple sectors. "Now," Alara commanded, securing Orion's pod to her body with specialized harnesses. They moved swiftly through the corridors, using service passages known only to the royal household and their attendants. The auxiliary hangar was in chaos when they arrived, with maintenance crews rushing to secure vessels against the atmospheric anomalies. The Empress Dowager's scout ship, sleek and silver against the cavernous docking bay, sat relatively unattended. "Identity verification required," announced the ship's security system as they approached the entry ramp. Alara pressed her palm against the scanner. "Princess Alara Vox Artax, Royal Authorization Code Asteria 97 Hellion." A tense moment passed before the ship responded. "Genetic verification confirmed. Welcome, Your Highness." Once aboard, Tessa took the pilot's station, while Alara secured Orion's pod and accessed communications. "We need to contact Earth, specifically Commander Vega," she said, fingers working the unfamiliar controls. "First priority is escaping the defense grid," Tessa countered, initiating launch sequences. "Communications will be monitored." The ship hummed to life, repulsors engaging as they lifted off. For a moment, Alara dared to hope they might slip away undetected amid the confusion. Then a commanding voice boomed over the hangar's communication system. "Unauthorized departure detected. Security lockdown initiated." Heavy blast doors began closing across the hangar mouth. Tessa accelerated sharply, threading the narrowing gap with precision that belied her lack of pilot training. "Hold on," she shouted as they scraped through with bare inches to spare, the ship shuddering as its outer hull contacted the closing doors. They burst into Artax Prime's twilight sky, the planet's 3 moons illuminating their ascent. Below, alarm lights flashed across the Imperial complex. Ahead, the planetary defense grid loomed, a network of orbital platforms capable of destroying unauthorized vessels. "Incoming transmission from the Imperial Palace," the ship's computer announced. Alara hesitated, then accepted. Her father's face filled the viewscreen, rage contorting his regal features. "Return immediately, daughter, and I may yet show mercy." "There can be no mercy where there is no understanding," Alara replied, cradling Orion's pod protectively. "You would destroy an innocent child for the crime of his heritage. That creature represents the end of our genetic purity, a purity I've spent centuries protecting." "No, father, he represents something you've forgotten, that evolution comes from adaptation, not isolation." Alara's voice strengthened. "I'm going to warn Earth about your plans." The Emperor's expression hardened. "Then you are no daughter of mine. You will be hunted across every star system until—" Alara terminated the connection as Tessa called out. "Defense platforms activating, weapons systems locking on." The ship's sensors screamed warnings as energy signatures built across the orbital grid. Alara rushed to the navigation console, inputting a desperate series of commands. "What are you doing?" Tessa demanded, executing evasive maneuvers as the first warning shots illuminated space around them. "My mother showed me something once," Alara explained, completing the sequence. "A hidden hyperspace vector, unstable but unmonitored." The ship's computer protested. "Warning, proposed jump coordinates intersect gravitational shadow of—" "Override safety protocols," Alara commanded. "Authorization Asteria Final Protocol." Space distorted around them as the first direct hit rocked their vessel. Systems flickered momentarily before the hyperspace drive engaged, tearing a hole in reality itself. As their ship vanished into the swirling vortex, Emperor Draken watched from his command center, scales darkened to the deepest black. "General Crixus," he said coldly, "accelerate our preparations. Earth burns in 7 days. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check resp—" The Royal Scout ship emerged from hyperspace with a violent shudder, alarms blaring across every system. Tessa fought the controls as they tumbled through unfamiliar space, the vessel's hull groaning under stresses it was never designed to endure. "Emergency stabilizers," Alara shouted over the cacophony, one arm wrapped protectively around Orion's pod while her free hand desperately worked to reroute power from non-essential systems. "Already engaged," Tessa replied through gritted teeth. "That hyperspace vector was even more unstable than you suggested." After agonizing moments, the ship grudgingly responded to Tessa's commands, its wild spinning gradually slowing to a controlled drift. Alara checked Orion, finding him remarkably calm despite the chaos, his curious eyes tracking the emergency lights with something like fascination. "Damage assessment?" she asked, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Tessa's fingers danced across the diagnostic console. "Primary propulsion offline, life support functioning at 70%, communication arrays damaged but operational for short-range transmission." She looked up, her expression grim. "We're not going anywhere quickly, Your Highness." Alara moved to the navigation system, studying the unfamiliar star patterns surrounding them. "The question is, where exactly are we now?" The computer struggled to triangulate their position, eventually displaying a sector map that caused both women to fall silent. They had jumped much farther than anticipated, and in an unexpected direction. "The Veridian Expanse," Tessa finally said, nomming the notoriously lawless region between Artaxian space and Earth's solar system. "We're beyond Imperial jurisdiction, but also in territory controlled by neither Empire nor Earth," Alara finished. "Space claimed by mercenaries, outcasts, and worse." As if summoned by her words, the proximity alert sounded. 3 vessels appeared on their scanners, small, fast ships moving in perfect coordination. "Pirates," Tessa concluded, already activating what remained of their defensive systems. Alara opened a communication channel. Attention, approaching vessels. This is Princess Alara of the Artaxian Empire on a diplomatic mission. We claim sovereign immunity and request assistance. The reply came swiftly, a rough, multi-toned voice that suggested a species with multiple vocal organs. Artaxian royalty traveling in a damaged ship without escort? How? Convenient. Prepare to be boarded, Your Highness. Alara cut the transmission, mind racing. Options. Limited, Tessa admitted. We could attempt to outrun them on auxiliary power, but we'd never make it, Alara finished. She looked down at Orion, who gazed back with Jason's eyes. We need a different approach. She reached for the communication panel again, but this time adjusted it to a frequency rarely used outside specific intelligence operations. This is Alara Vox Artax broadcasting on the Free Trader Emergency Band. I seek sanctuary under the interspecies refugee protocols. I offer exchange value. For long moments, silence answered her. The pirate vessels continued their approach, now close enough that their magnetic grapples could be deployed at any moment. Then a new voice crackled through their speakers, female, confident, unmistakably human. This is Captain Maya Reeves of the Independent Transport Horizon's Edge. We acknowledge your refugee status claim. Stand by for intervention. A new contact appeared on their scanners, larger than the pirate vessels, and moving at impressive speed from behind the nearest planetoid. The pirates' formation faltered momentarily before regrouping to face this new arrival. Captain Reeves, the pirate leader transmitted, this claim doesn't concern you. We found this prize first. And yet, came the composed reply, I'm compelled by frontier treaty regulations to investigate any refugee claim, unless you'd prefer I call in coalition patrols to adjudicate. The mention of coalition forces, the joint human-alien peacekeeping alliance that patrolled the border regions, caused the pirate vessels to hesitate. After a tense standoff, they slowly retreated, their commander offering a final threat. Another time, Captain, when regulations aren't watching. As the Horizon's Edge drew alongside their crippled vessel, Alara sensed both opportunity and danger. Captain Reeves might be human, but that guaranteed nothing. Earth had its share of opportunists and mercenaries. Prepare for docking, the human captain instructed. And Princess, I suggest you bring whatever exchange value you mentioned. My assistance isn't free. 30 minutes later, Alara stood in the cargo bay of the Horizon's Edge, facing a tall human woman with dark skin, close-cropped silver hair, and eyes that had clearly witnessed the harsher realities of frontier life. Behind Captain Reeves stood a small but diverse crew, 2 humans, a centaurian with distinctive cranial ridges, and a species Alara didn't recognize. So Maya Reeves began, arms crossed. An Artaxian princess fleeing imperial space with. Her eyes widened slightly as she noticed the contents of the pod Alara carried. Well, that explains a few things. My son, Alara confirmed, lifting her chin with royal pride while fighting maternal fear. And the reason I need passage to Earth immediately. Earth, Maya laughed, though without humor. You're aware your empire just declared humanity a genetic threat. Emergency broadcasts have been blaring across all frequencies. Earth's defenses are on high alert, and they're detaining any Artaxians found in coalition space. Alara's heart sank. Then it's already begun. My father moves faster than I anticipated. Your father, Maya's expression changed as understanding dawned. Emperor Draken is your father. Yes, and he plans to destroy Earth because of my son's existence. Alara opened the data crystal hanging around her neck, projecting holographic images of the Imperial fleet deployment plans she had managed to copy before their escape. The Armada launches in days. Billions will die unless Earth is warned, properly warned, with tactical information they can use. Maya studied the projections, her military background evident in how quickly she assessed the strategic implications. This is legitimate intel, she concluded, looking to her crew. The kind Earth Command would pay handsomely for. Then we have an arrangement, Alara asked. Not quite yet. Maya circled Alara and the pod, studying Orion with undisguised curiosity. The child's father is human, I presume, someone important enough to make the Emperor consider planetary genocide as an appropriate response. Commander Jason Vega of Earth's Interstellar Defense Force, Alara answered, and I need to reach him before the Imperial fleet does. At the mention of Jason's name, Maya's expression flickered with recognition. Vega, She exchanged glances with her human crewmates. We served together in the Proxima campaign. He's a good man. The best, Ilara agreed softly. Maya seemed to come to a decision. 3 days to Earth, assuming we push the engines and avoid Imperial patrols. I'll get you there, Princess. But understand this is my ship under my command. Your royal status means nothing here. Agreed, Ilara said without hesitation. As they sealed the arrangement, Tessa approached from the docking tube, carrying what supplies they'd managed to salvage from their vessel. The look she gave Captain Reeves conveyed clear warning. Royal blood or not, Ilara and Orion were under her protection. Maya merely smiled at the unspoken challenge. Welcome aboard the Horizon's Edge, ladies and little prince. She gestured toward the interior of her ship. Let's outrun an empire. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check Earth's orbital defense platform Sierra 7 blazed with activity as military personnel rushed to battle stations. Through the reinforced viewport, Commander Jason Vega watched transport ships evacuating civilians from the lunar colonies, the procession of lights stretching like a lifeline toward the relative safety of Earth. Latest intelligence confirms it, sir, Lieutenant Rivera reported, handing him a data tablet. The Artaxian fleet has crossed the Proxima threshold, 47 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. Jason studied the tactical display, the familiar weight of command settling heavily across his shoulders. Estimated time to Earth orbit. 22 hours, sir, and coalition forces are still 3 days out. In the 6 days since Emperor Draken's declaration of war, Earth had mobilized every available resource. Yet Jason knew the brutal truth. Humanity's defenses couldn't withstand the full might of the Artaxian Empire. Their only hope lay in delaying tactics while diplomatic channels worked frantically to understand what had triggered the Emperor's sudden hostility. Commander, a communications officer called out. Unidentified vessel approaching from Sector 4. It's not responding to standard hails, but... Sir, they're broadcasting your name on a military emergency frequency. Jason's heart stuttered. Put it through to my private channel. He moved to his command station, hands trembling slightly as he activated the secure communication array. The screen flickered before resolving into an image that stole his breath. Ilara, looking exhausted but alive, with an unfamiliar woman at her side. Jason, Ilara's voice carried across light years, emotion filling the single word. Ilara, how? He stopped, military training reasserting control. Your father has launched his fleet. We have less than a day before. I know, we're approaching Earth now on the independent vessel Horizon's Edge. Her image wavered as she adjusted something off-screen. Jason, there's something you need to see. The camera panned down to reveal a small pod, and within it. Is that? Jason couldn't finish the question, mind refusing to process what his eyes clearly showed him. Your son, Ilara confirmed softly. Orion. The command center seemed to fade around him as Jason stared at the child. Unmistakably a blend of human and Artaxian features, yet somehow perfect in his uniqueness. How is this possible? Your scientists always claimed. They were wrong, and my father considers our child an abomination, a threat to Artaxian genetic purity. Her voice hardened. That's why he's coming, not for conquest but extermination. The human woman beside Ilara leaned into frame. Commander Vega, Captain Maya Reeves, remember me from Proxima? We've got the princess and your son, plus tactical data on the Imperial fleet. Request immediate landing clearance and security detail. Jason snapped back to the present crisis. Granted, I'll meet you personally. He hesitated, eyes returning to the sleeping form of his son. Ilara, thank you for bringing him to me. I brought him home, she corrected gently. 3 hours later, Earth's highest military and government officials crowded the secured conference chamber deep beneath the North American Defense Command. Heated arguments filled the room as leaders debated strategies for the imminent conflict. The planetary shield cannot withstand sustained bombardment from their primary weapons, Admiral Chen insisted, pointing to simulation data. We need to focus on evacuation protocols. Evacuate to where? General Okafor countered. There's nowhere in the system they can't reach. At the center of this storm, Jason stood beside Ilara, who held Orion in her arms. The child had become the focal point of humanity's greatest crisis, and possibly its salvation. The Emperor won't listen to reason, Alara stated, addressing the assembly. Not while he views humanity as a genetic contaminant, but there's one option we haven't considered. She nodded to Tessa, who activated a holographic display showing complex Artaxian genetic sequences. These are the royal bloodline markers, Alara explained. For millennia, my people believed them immutable, the pinnacle of evolutionary development. She adjusted the display, highlighting specific segments. But Orion's hybrid DNA reveals something remarkable. Our genetic material adapted, strengthened by the combination. Dr. Alina Maxwell, Earth's leading xenogeneticist, studied the sequences with growing excitement. She's right. The markers we're seeing indicate potential resistance to several degenerative conditions prevalent in Artaxian physiology. This hybrid genome could actually represent an evolutionary advantage. You're suggesting we try to scientifically prove to the Emperor that human DNA improves his precious bloodline? Admiral Chen asked skeptically. No, Jason interjected, the beginnings of a plan forming. We need to show him. Words won't convince Emperor Draken, but seeing might. He turned to Alara. The royal succession rights, they're based on genetic verification, correct? Alara's eyes widened as she understood. The bloodline confirmation ceremony, performed in the presence of the High Council to verify a royal heir's claim. Her scales shifted to a hopeful blue-green. It's our oldest tradition, predating even the imperial dynasty. Then we need to get you and Orion aboard the imperial flagship, Jason concluded. Force a public genetic assessment that all Artaxians can witness. That's suicide, General Okafor protested. Not necessarily, Captain Reeves interjected from her position near the wall. My ship can approach under diplomatic signals. With Princess Alara's authorization codes, we might get close enough. As the debate continued, Jason moved to a private corner with Alara and their son. Orion reached out, tiny fingers, 5 instead of 6, wrapping around his father's larger hand. I never thought I'd see you again, Jason admitted quietly, after you left Earth without a word. I couldn't tell you about the pregnancy, Alara replied. I didn't believe it was possible myself until it was too late, her expression softened. But every day I saw you in him, his eyes, his determination. And your courage, Jason added, gently touching the faint scales at Orion's temples, subtle echoes of his mother's heritage. The moment was interrupted as alarms blared throughout the facility. Admiral Chen rushed to the communications station, face grim as he addressed the room. The Artaxian fleet has accelerated. They'll reach Earth orbit in 3 hours. The final plan came together in a desperate rush, a single chance to prevent interstellar genocide. As the Imperial Armada entered Earth's solar system, a lone vessel approached under diplomatic flags, the Horizon's Edge, repurposed as an impromptu embassy. On the bridge, Alara stood resplendent in formal royal attire, Orion in her arms and Jason at her side. Captain Reeves guided their approach toward the massive Imperial flagship where Emperor Draken commanded the assembled might of Artaxian military power. They're scanning us, Tessa reported from the communications station. Weapon systems are tracking our approach, but they haven't fired. Transmit my royal authentication codes, Alara instructed, and open a direct channel to the Emperor. Moments later, Draken's imposing figure filled their view screen, his scales black with rage. You dare return, traitor, with the human contamination. I invoke the right of bloodline assessment, Alara declared formally, using the ancient ceremonial language. Before the High Council and all witnesses, I present Orion Vox-Artax Vega as true heir of the imperial line, possessing qualities that strengthen rather than diminish our people. The Emperor's inner eyelids flickered. He couldn't refuse such a fundamental tradition without undermining his own legitimacy. You will be granted safe passage to present this claim. The human remains aboard your vessel. Commander Vega is the child's father and has equal standing in this assessment, Alara countered. The ancient laws are clear. Both genetic contributors must be present. After a tense silence, the Emperor grudgingly agreed. You have 1 hour to present your case before the High Council, then the human species faces its judgment. The Imperial flagship's ceremonial chamber echoed with murmurs as Alara, Jason, and Orion entered, surrounded by a contingent of wary Imperial guards. The High Council, 12 of the most powerful Artaxians in the Empire, watched from elevated positions around the room's perimeter. At the center, The ancient genetic confirmation altar hummed with energy, its crystalline surface designed to analyze and display the most intimate details of Artaxian biology. Emperor Draken waited on his elevated throne, expression carved from stone. Present the offspring for assessment. With gentle reverence, Alara placed Orion upon the altar. The child remained surprisingly calm, looking around with curious eyes as the scanning field enveloped him in soft light. The chamber fell silent as genetic sequences appeared in the air above, a three-dimensional representation of Orion's unique DNA. Alara stepped forward, addressing the assembled council. Distinguished members of the High Council, what you see is not contamination but evolution. The human genome has not weakened our royal bloodline but strengthened it. Dr. Varix, the imperial physician who had first examined Alara's pregnancy, approached the display with professional interest. Remarkable! The hybrid sequences show resistance to cellular degradation patterns that have plagued our species for generations. Manipulation, Emperor Draken accused, rising from his throne. This display has been altered. The genetic altar cannot be falsified, Father, Alara interrupted. You know this. Our most sacred traditions confirm what your prejudice refuses to accept, that isolation leads to stagnation while diversity brings strength. Jason stepped forward, ignoring the guards who tensed at his movement. Your Majesty, Earth doesn't seek conflict with the Artaxian Empire. We offer alliance, cooperation, and clearly our species are more compatible than anyone imagined. Throughout the chamber, council members conferred in hushed tones, studying the genetic display with growing interest and diminishing hostility. Your Majesty, the eldest council member finally spoke, her ancient scales pale with age and wisdom. The evidence cannot be dismissed. This child carries the royal markers, undiminished and possibly enhanced by the human contribution. Emperor Draken stared at his grandson, conflicting emotions battling across his regal features. For a moment, just a moment, his scales shifted toward the royal blue of acceptance before hardening again to obsidian rejection. I will not be swayed by a single genetic anomaly. The attack proceeds as planned. Then you attack your own future, came a new voice, strong, feminine, and carrying absolute authority. The chamber doors opened to reveal an elderly Artaxian female, her ornate robes and crown-like head crest marking her identity unmistakably. Mother, Emperor Draken acknowledged, genuine surprise breaking through his rigid facade. Empress Dowager Lyria, retired from public life for nearly a decade, moved with deliberate grace toward the altar where her great-grandson lay. The assembled council members bowed deeply as she passed. I monitored this situation from my retreat, she announced. When I learned my granddaughter had fled with a hybrid child, I knew the ancient prophecies were finally manifesting. What prophecies? The Emperor demanded. The Empress Dowager touched Orion gently, her ancient eyes softening. Before our people mastered interstellar travel, our earliest genetic scholars predicted this moment, when our bloodline would require external strengthening to survive. They left warnings in our most sacred texts that isolation would eventually lead to our extinction. She turned to face her son directly. Your fear of contamination is misplaced, my son. This child represents salvation, not dilution. As if responding to her words, Orion reached up, tiny fingers touching the Empress Dowager's weathered scales. The gesture, innocent yet profound, silenced the chamber completely. After what seemed an eternity, Emperor Draken descended from his throne, approaching the altar where 3 generations of his family gathered. He studied Orion's features, the unmistakable royal scale patterns at his temples, the determined set of his jaw that mirrored the Emperor's own. The attack is suspended, he finally announced, voice echoing through the chamber, pending further genetic analysis. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was a beginning. Later, as Earth's defense forces stood down and diplomatic channels reopened between the planets, Alara and Jason watched the stars from a viewport on the horizon's edge. Orion slept peacefully between them, one hand curled around his father's finger, the other resting against his mother's scales. What happens now? Jason asked softly. Centuries of prejudice won't disappear overnight, Alara acknowledged. But neither will Orion. He exists living proof that our species are stronger together than apart. A bridge between worlds, Jason mused, looking down at their son. And the first of many, Alara added with a small smile. The imperial physicians are already discussing the medical implications of hybrid genetics. There's talk of a joint research initiative. Beyond the viewport, Earth gleamed blue and vibrant against the darkness of space. In the distance, the Imperial flagship remained in high orbit, no longer a threat, but a wary observer. "We'll build something new," Jason promised, taking Alara's hand. "A future neither of our worlds could imagine alone." As if in agreement, Orion stirred in his sleep, his unique features peaceful in the starlight that had once divided his heritage but now illuminated a path forward for both civilizations.